Games journalists are doing what games journalists do, taking fun entertainment and absolutely crapping on it to inject their own political opinions and ideology onto it. The latest is Rock, Paper, Shotgun and their writer Edwin Evans-Thirlwel, who decided to attack Saber Interactive Focus Entertainment Games Workshop over their latest release, successful to boot, Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2. This is over at Rock, Paper, Shotgun. I will have the link in the description below. You can also find a link to join the Trump Report as a member, where you can support me exposing woke ideology that is destroying our entertainment and society at large. But here is the headline: Why Play a Fascist? Unpacking the Hideousness of the Space Marine, written by this guy, Edwin Evans-Thirlwel. This article is absolutely long. I think he thinks way too much of himself because he just kind of goes on like a massive rant. And you can see here, it just devolves into just political nonsense. He's talking about Hitler and Trump and all this other stuff. It's all about him not liking what is happening in the UK politically, what's happening in the United States politically. So he has to equate all of that to fascism. And then he basically says people who like this game like all those political people, so they're all fascists. And it's just him throwing a giant hissy fit that people disagree with him politically. But let's start off here. He says, in order to make Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 enjoyable, Saber Interactive had to make the Space Marines less like Space Marines. That's to say, less like semi-lobotomized, hypnotically indoctrinated slave soldiers enthralled to an uncaring and possibly non-existent god, in the words of Rick Priestley, primary writer for the original Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader rulebooks back in the 1980s. In Warhammer 40,000, supposedly satirical, definitively a grimdark Imperium of Man. Isn't that interesting? He cites Rick Priestley talking about what the Space Marines are as like an authoritative source, and then immediately in the next sentence, he's saying supposedly he's like undermining the own authority. You literally can't make this stuff up. I mean, these people are not very intelligent, but that is what he does there. Anyways, Space Marines are the genetically engineered sons and warrior monks of the Emperor, a messianic figure reduced to a dreaming corpse on the Golden Throne, whose immense psychic emissions serve as a kind of spirit lighthouse for interstellar travel. Space Marines are grotesque Supermen clad in motorized armor who exist to exterminate the alien, the mutant, and the unclean. They are the ultimate embodiment of patriarchal, xenophobic fascism. Patriarchal, xenophobic fascism. Yeah, okay. They're literally they're Space Marines. They're Space Marines. They are trying to survive. They are trying to allow humanity to survive. If they were not there in the Warhammer 40K world, all of the Xenos would literally kill them. Hard stop. But patriarchal, xenophobic fascism. Again, it's all about modern day politics. And that's what it has to do. It has nothing to do with actually being the lore in the universe or anything like that. This is a source of some irony, given that they themselves barely qualify any longer as human, according to the ideals of uncorrupted humanity they champion. And then he goes on and cites here Oliver Hollis-Like, Space Marine 2's creative director. He says, it's very hard to imagine how they live their lives. They're so far from our daily lives and concerns, and we had to find a way to bridge that extreme mentality with something more human that could be connected to by fans, by audiences, by players, so that we could actually make sense of their story rather than them just being fanatical killing machines, because it's hard to like those characters. I don't know. I don't consider myself a massive Warhammer 40K lore expert. I've read the Horus Heresy novels. I've played the Dawn of War games. I've dabbled here and there with some other Warhammer stuff. But it's not that difficult to imagine how the Space Marines live their lives. I think it's been well documented. Lots of novelists have done a really good job of showing how they live their lives. Dan Abnett probably being at the top of that list. So, he's probably just giving this guy some PR talking points and not really just kind of like giving him something to say here, because it's really easy to imagine how they live their lives, because we've seen it already, right? It's there in novels and everything else. Anyways, this guy goes on and says, in particular, of course, Saber wants you to like the Space Marines under your control. Protagonists Dimitri and Titus and his subordinates, Chiron and Gadriel. Together, says Hollis, like the trio form a window into the difficult life of a Space Marine, where there's a threat of corruption on every side. It's a real threat, and you have to be firm and unwavering. And then if you get on the right side of them, there's this absolute brotherhood and sacrifice that you get from it. So again, really not difficult to imagine how they live their lives. They sound very much like a band of brothers, like soldiers do in the military. And obviously, you can point to the U.S. military, but you can go back. There's plenty of examples of this. I actually think Steven Erikson does a really, really good job of this in his Book of the Fallen of the Malazan Empire with the Bridge Burners and their kind of band of brotherhood. So you see this in other pieces of fiction, and obviously it is inspired by the brotherhood that does indeed form among military units, whether that be the United States, whether that be the famous tale of the 300 Spartans, etc. Anyways, the guy goes on and says this. Without spoiling too much, there is mistrust within the team. Chiron and Gadriel suspect Titus of being tainted by this rolling cosmic realm of chaos, a seedbed for demons and sorcery, but the game tempers their zealotry both in terms of the plot, which, as you'd expect from an action game, mires them in the moment of battle with overwhelming swarms of insect monsters, and in terms of how they talk. Also, like narrative director Craig Sherman pushed back on some of the do's and don'ts they received from Games Workshop about Space Marine vocabulary. They deviated from the suggested phraseology to make Titus and his comrades sound less strange and antiquated, less like the Spanish Inquisition, and more like soldiers from real-world, present-day militaries. Space Marines don't necessarily say things like dismissed. Hollis like observed, there's a line in the game where Acheron says company dismissed, and they really wanted me to change that to brothers attend your duties or something, but it's 3 words instead of 1. And if that model was applied to all of the language in the game, I really strongly felt that people wouldn't get it. I absolutely disagree. I think that the brothers attend your duties is much better than company dismissed. Company dismissed does indeed feel too modern. I think that the brothers attend your duties actually has much more command about it. You can even say brothers attend your duties, like the way that it would be delivered instead of just like company dismissed. Obviously, it's minimal, it's marginal, right? But I do like the brothers attend your duties because it also shows that they are brothers, they are part of this brotherhood, and I actually think it helps him imagine how they live their lives, and kind of emphasizes that they do have that brotherhood there, whereas it's just kind of company dismissed is just kind of there isn't really any of that connection there. Anyways, the guy goes on here and says, it's saying something about how accustomed I am to the ostensibly parodic figure of the Space Marine being portrayed as a hero that I didn't really question this desire to make you like and get fanatical killing machines at the time. To be clear, I don't think Saber are deliberately and consciously trying to kindle empathy for literal fascists and forces in Space Marine 2. Literally, that's what they told you they were doing, but then you're saying that you don't think that they're doing that? What? That's what they said they were doing. They literally told you that they were trying to help you imagine how they live their daily lives. What? Okay. Anyways, much of the above reasoning is grounded in ostensibly neutral, best practice questions of craft and characterization. So he basically is saying that I don't want to make it seem like I'm actually accusing Saber Interactive of being fascists and promoting fascism. Like, that's what this guy is saying. He's trying to be a weasel with his words to try and not accuse Saber Interactive and the people he's literally getting access to write this story of being fascists, because he wants to continue to get access from them. But the people who played their game and enjoyed it, well, you're the fascists because I hate you and your political ideologies. You can't make this stuff up, dude. These people are so obvious. Anyways, he goes on and says, still, it would have been useful to dig into what it means to make Space Marines likable, because Warhammer 40,000 today has an issue with certain groups of players actively identifying with them. Well, I wonder why they identify with them, because they are likable, because they're literally fighting against Xenos hordes that want to destroy them. The aesthetic looks cool. I mean, is it hard to understand why these people are like, look at this? They look cool. They fight for each other. They're fighting for humanity, to save humanity, to keep humanity, to be prosperous. I actually think, and I posited this to a number of people, that a really cool Space Marine story, 40K story, is you legitimately get someone like Horus, obviously, who does not get corrupted by chaos, but uncovers the dark secret of the Emperor, realizes how absolutely disgustingly evil and repugnant and terrible it is, and then decides to lead a rebellion, a righteous rebellion against it, because he's like, we shouldn't be fighting for this. We need to be fighting for what is good and just. And I think that could be a really interesting story to tell, but obviously that would super piss off people like this guy, Edwin here, who think that Space Marines are fascists, right? And anyone who likes a Space Marine is a fascist. So he goes on here and says, Exactly how far this extends is unclear, but the game's fascist subculture is significant enough that Games Workshop have felt moved to publish statements of disavowing outright bigots and reminding the tabletop community that the Imperium of Man is a send-up of fascism, of empire, and of murderous patriarchs, not an endorsement. So there you go. I mean, the guy is literally just combining all of these things into one: fascism, empire, murderous patriarchs, yada, yada, yada. It's all bad. Anything but my communism is bad. Even though if you go and look up the new definition of fascism that they use now, it's literally just a government that doesn't accept any kind of opposition. So you could technically have fascist communism, I guess. I guess Stalin was really a fascist now, right? Who knows? I mean, who really knows what these people are even talking about anymore? Because they just changed the definitions, they changed the words, they have no meaning anymore. And that's the point, right? That's the point, that they are always trying to obfuscate in order to confuse and muddy the waters so that they can continue to push their political agenda behind the scenes. He goes on and says the company's outspokenness is praiseworthy, and there's the argument that much of this is out of their hands. They created it. They tell the stories. This guy literally just wants to destroy Space Marines, right? Like or he wants to remake them in his image, right? Let the past die, kill it if you have to. And then after that, that's obviously, I like to quote that from The Last Jedi because I definitely think that's what they believe, just to simplify. But then you have to add on to it, remake in my image. So they want these Space Marines to be communist. Communist Space Marines would be totally fine. If they were communist Space Marines, this guy wouldn't be writing this article whatsoever at all. Or he would be writing a completely different one. It would just be like, Space Marines are absolutely fantastic and we should emulate them because they are the communist champions of the world. Like, that is what this guy would be preaching here. Anyways, he goes on and says, every community harbors extremists who read against the grain, but Games Workshop are also guilty of hypocrisy here, in that modern-day Warhammer 40K is a far cry from the satire it once claimed to be. Back in the 1980s, Warhammer 40K could have been called counterculture, its loopy fascist universe, a warping of Thatcherite Britain and the Cold War, its artworks and characterizations subversive in their feckless jamming together of devices from 2000 AD comics, Milton and Doom, but over time, the license holders have softened and consolidated the wackier elements in order to make Warhammer 40,000 more sellable. A gradual mainstreaming that has transformed the Space Marine, in particular, from a crazed and distorted thug into a stoical, comradely, and devout necessary evil pitched against a galaxy of apocalyptic terrors. So remember how this guy was asking why the Space Marine is like, well, he literally lists it right here. Stoic, comradely, devout, and pitched against a galaxy of apocalyptic terrors, right? Like, you already knew the answer. You already knew the answer. Anyways, like I said, this guy just goes on and on and on and on. It's just absolute wall of text here in this article, and he just gets absolutely trashed. Now, if we look over here on X, the guy, the whole outlet is just getting absolutely trashed. Epic Mike reading this article, just like, are you kidding me? Squirrel Mob says, get utterly effed. You guys can't even get a few likes on your Twitter page. Just file for bankruptcy. I want to be able to see you all stand in the unemployment line. Worthless journalists. This is probably my favorite here. This is Neil McDonald. Let's play this real quick.
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook. No offense.
Absolutely. It's absolutely on point. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's a trying to present itself as some high intellect criticism when all it is just a bunch of gobbledygook communist, just word salad. This is such a tourist argument when Warhammer has been around basically more than my entire life. F off, says John Douglas. No one gives a crap what you think. Sneed White, author is bold. Author is bald. Opinion disregarded. Supervillain says rage bait. Nice. Noted Hitler sympathizer Donald Trump. There we have it. Rock, paper, shotgun in a nutshell. The crusade never ends. Too lazy to refute all of the article, but calling Space Marines incels is BS. Incel is short for involuntary celibate. Basically, someone who wants to F, but he can't because no one wants him. But everyone forgot the meaning of that word again. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. These words have no meaning. Let's actually look to see where he said that part. We didn't even get to that part yet. Let's just do a little control F here. We got it. He says, does he say here? Space Marines are the ultimate incels. They perform what Sontag calls fascism's ideal eroticism, sexuality converted into the magnetism of leaders and the joy of followers, which doesn't simply erase the problem of sex, but reframes the savage repression of the sexual urge as a manly virtue. What? Absolute word salad. I mean, this guy's trying to present himself as some kind of high intellect, and it is, as Norm Macdonald said, just commie gobbledygook. But this is what these people do. This is what games journalists do. They just attack things that they view as opposed to their political ideology, and they attack the things that they see their opponents are kind of attached to, or people that they view as their political opponents, and they have to inject their political ideology on everything that they do. I think Isaac Young does a really good job. Novelist Isaac Young does a really good job of talking about this. It is like an older child taking a younger child's toy and pooping all over it, and then trying to hand you back the toy to play with once it's been pooped on. And that's exactly what this guy is doing. He's trying to poop on Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2. And I don't think it's going to work. At least it's not going to work with this game. Doesn't seem to work right now. But if it does work, if they do decide to actually poop on it, and Games Workshop is kind of doing it themselves, right? They introduced the female custodes. They've been doing all the gender ideology stuff in a number of their books, not just 40K, but in fantasy as well. And if they continue to do that, what's going to end up happening is what you're going to see what's ending up happening with a lot of these AAA video game studios. It's like, no, you keep your poopy toy, and we're going to sit over here and laugh at you playing with a poopy toy, because it's just, you're playing with a poopy toy, right? So that's where we're at now. That's where we're at. If they want to poop on the toy, they can go over there and play with the poopy toy, and we're going to laugh at them. But we don't want you to poop on the toy, because we like the toy as it is. And that's why we're going to be calling people like this Edwin guy out, because he's trying to encourage Games Workshop to poop on the toy even more for his political ideology. And that's all it is. That's all it is. But let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, and to always speak the truth.